Picture two 35-year-olds, one in 1990, one today, same age, same country. And as a generation, today's holds less than half the share of the nation's wealth. The only real difference between the two? The year they were born. Same effort, same hours, same ambition. One of them just showed up when the machine was cheap to enter. When baby boomers averaged 35 years old, they held about 20% of all American household wealth. When millennials reached the same age, 0.46, less than half the slice, at the same point in life. And no, it's not because one generation watched too much Netflix. In the next 10 minutes, the four forces that actually built this gap, with real numbers, the honest twist almost nobody mentions, and the one advantage that works exactly the same today as it did in 1980. Chapter 1. The ladder. To understand the gap, you have to see what climbing looked like when the climb was cheap. Here's the part nobody says out loud. The previous generation didn't just work hard. They bought assets when assets were cheap. And then they spent 4 decades riding one of the strongest bull markets in recorded history. That's not a strategy you copy. That's a birthday you can't choose. Start with the house. In the mid-'80s, a typical American home cost around 3.5 times the typical household income. Today, that same house costs around 6 times income. Same walls, same roof, twice the weight on your back. You can see the consequence in one brutal number. In 1981, the median first-time homebuyer in America was 29 years old. Today, the median first-time buyer is 40, an all-time record. 11 extra years of paying rent before the wealth machine even starts. And what do you do during those 11 extra years? You rent. Every month, money leaves your account and builds someone else's net worth. The treadmill runs. The odometer stays at 0. Zoom out, and the pattern holds. In the early 80s, about 41% of under 35 households owned a home. Today, it's under 37, after dipping as low as 34 in 2016. And of all the homes sold in America last year, only 21% went to first-time buyers, a historic low. The market isn't just expensive, it's increasingly a club for people who already own. And that matters more than it sounds, because for the American middle class, the house was never just a house. It was the savings account you happen to live inside. Double the ticket price at the entrance and you lock an entire generation out of the machine. That's force number 1. Chapter 2. The paycheck. Because assets are only half the story. The other half is what the work itself started paying. Since 1979, American productivity, the value each hour of work actually creates, is up around 90%. Typical worker pay over the same period, adjusted for inflation, up around a third of that. The economy nearly doubled its output per hour. The paycheck crawled. That gap didn't vanish into thin air. It flowed to profits and to the people who already owned the assets. Which creates a cruel loop. The less your paycheck grows, the harder it is to buy assets, and the more the asset owners pull away. Earners stayed flat, owners compounded. Meanwhile, the price of the entry ticket exploded. A college degree cost roughly 3 times what it did in 1980, after adjusting for inflation. Honest footnote, because we're data nerds here. In the most recent decade, tuition has actually grown slower than inflation. The ticket stopped inflating, but the debt from the expensive decades is still on millions of backs. So millions start their careers already owing the equivalent of a house down payment. Flat pay, expensive ticket, negative starting line. That's force number 2, and none of it is a character flaw. It's arithmetic. Feel the vice closing? Rent eats the present, debt payments eat the past, and investing, the thing that builds the future, gets whatever crumbs are left. For years, for many, the crumbs were 0. Chapter 3. The head start. This is the force nobody can see on a paycheck, and it's the biggest one of all. Anyone who simply bought stocks through the 80s and 90s bought into decades of extraordinary returns, often without any special skill. Their money has now been compounding for 40 years. So force 3 is the simplest one, time in the market. Their edge wasn't stock-picking genius. It was starting the clock in 1985 instead of 2025. Want to see what early was worth? $10,000 parked in the S&P 500 in 1985. Dividends reinvested is worth somewhere around $800,000 today. No genius, no timing, just decades. Better still, the 401k era began just in time for them. Whole careers where the system quietly bought stocks with every paycheck, automatically before they could even spend it. Understand, most of them never beat the market. Most never tried. They just stood inside it, automatically paycheck after paycheck, while reinvested dividends quietly did the heavy lifting. Now stack the 3 forces. Houses at double the relative price, pay that barely moved while the ticket tripled, and markets that already ran for decades before you got your first paycheck. You show up ready to climb, and the ladder they used looks like a wall. If that makes you angry, good. Anger with data is useful, but now comes the part the doom videos skip. Chapter 4. The honest part. If this video stopped here, it would be lying to you by omission, because the last 5 years broke the pattern. Because in the last few years, the story quietly changed. From 2019 to 2023, the average real wealth of Americans under 40 grew 49%, and for millennials alone, it roughly doubled. That's the fastest wealth catch-up for young households in modern records. Stimulus-era savings, a job market that finally paid at the bottom, and a stock market this generation finally entered. First, the dark part of the arc, so you know I'm not sugarcoating. In 2019, the typical young household was worth less, in real dollars, than the typical young household of 1989. 30 years of net progress. Negative. Put a number on it. In 2019, the median household under 35 was worth less, in real terms, than in 1989. By 2022, it had jumped to $39,000, the biggest 3-year gain ever recorded. And a record share of Americans now own stocks, 62% of adults, the highest ever measured. Young investors are entering earlier and cheaper than any generation before them, 3 taps from a phone. And now the plot twist. Count it per person, in today's dollars, and a millennial at 35 actually holds about $1.35 for every dollar a boomer held at the same age. The half, from the start of this video, is about the share of a pie that got enormous, a pie their parents still own most of. And here's the detail that matters. When this generation actually got money into assets, the machine worked exactly the same as it did for their parents. Same engine, same compounding. Which proves something important. The gap is a genuine headwind. It is not a life sentence. Read that again. The system is genuinely harder to enter than it was, but the engine inside it, compounding, hasn't changed at all. Chapter 5. The door that's still open. Everything so far was diagnosis. This is the treatment, and it fits in 3 moves. Because there is exactly one asset where a 25-year-old today is richer than every billionaire boomer on the planet. Time. And time is the single most powerful input in all of finance. Run the numbers with me. $200 a month, earning 7%. The market's long-run average. Start at 22, and by 65 it grows to roughly $655,000. Start at 35 instead. Same money, same market. And you end with about $244,000. The 13 extra years nearly triple the outcome. Not more money, just more time. And that is the whole flip of this story. The head start their generation got by accident, cheap assets, an early clock, is the one thing you can still choose on purpose, today. And unlike your parents, you don't need a broker on the phone, a suit, or $1,000 minimum. Entering the market today costs $0 in fees and takes about 10 minutes from your phone. So what do you actually do with all this? 3 moves, in a strict order. Write them down. Move 1, a starter emergency buffer, even 1 month of expenses, in cash. It's not an investment. It's the thing that stops you from selling your investments at the worst possible moment. Move 2, kill high-interest debt. A credit card at 22% is a guaranteed negative return that no stock market will reliably beat. Paying it off is investing. Move 3, automate a boring, diversified index fund. Every month on payday, before you can touch the money. You are manufacturing the exact same automatic compounding machine their generation got handed by their employers. And here's a gift your parents never got. Cost. Funds in their era often charged 1, even 2% a year. A broad index fund today costs 0.03%. Over 40 years, that difference alone is worth tens of thousands of dollars. And if $200 a month sounds impossible right now, start ugly. Start with 50. The amount decides how big the snowball gets. The clock decides whether there's a snowball at all. The wall is real, but this particular door has never been cheaper to open, in all of financial history. One last look at that hourglass. Every month of waiting quietly costs your 65-year-old self real money. The most expensive thing a young investor owns isn't rent or coffee or the phone. It's a wasted month. So yes, the gap is real, the numbers are stacked, and pretending otherwise would be an insult. But the engine that built their wealth is sitting right there, and your version of it has more fuel than theirs ever did. If you want the math done for you, the free money map tools are linked below. Every calculator from this video, broker rankings for the United States and Europe, and a 1-minute market brief. All it costs is your email. This is education, not financial advice. Every number in this video is sourced in the description. Start your clock. See you in the next one.